So now I'm going to introduce the panel, but a little bit about myself. So my name is Juan Cortez. My family is originally from Mexico City, or DF as we used to call it back then, and they immigrated to Los Angeles, California, where I'm originally from. I graduated from Berkeley, and I'm currently attaining my master's in college counseling and student development here at NC State. Go Pack! So why Juntos matters to me is because I've always believed that through education, anything is possible. And I've been dreaming of creating a program that helps Latinx people not only get to college, but be empowered to know that they belong in higher education. Luckily, Juntos does just this. And it feels like it's a match made in heaven. So I'm proud to help my youth and their families reach their collegiate dreams.
Hello, my name is Alejandra Huerta, and I'm Assistant Professor of Phytobacteriology in the Department of Entomology and Plant Pathology at North Carolina State University. And I'm here also to introduce our speakers and our panelists. And I'm going to summarize why Juntos matters, why I'm here, and a little bit of my academic path by sharing with you my personal statement for graduate school. So here it goes, and I hope it all combines everything together. So in mid-August of 2009, I was walking my dog in my hometown of Salinas, California, when a man began to ask me a question about my dog. The questions began with the usual, what is the dog breeds, how old is he, and the one question that led to an interesting realization. Why do you walk him so late? To which I responded that I got out of work late and that was the only time I had available to do so. He proceeded to ask, where do you work? At the Environmental Studies Department at the University of California, Santa Cruz. I answered. He immediately responded with a question that sounded more like an affirmation. So you clean offices there? Suddenly, years of educational struggles flashed before my eyes. Once the question had taken its full effect and I recovered my speech, I responded, no, I do research. To be honest, I don't think the man even knew what research meant. I excused myself and continued to walk my dog. However, my mind was spinning in every direction. The most persistent thought was, why does this man assume that the only position I could hold at a university is that of a janitor? In truth, I understand why. Salinas is a predominantly Hispanic agricultural labor town, where working in the fields is the primary source of income for many families. Both my parents worked the strawberry fields for many years. Eventually, my mother obtained a job at a salad packing company. This was considered to be much better employment. At least she was no longer picking strawberries under the sometimes cruel weather conditions and constant physical discomfort. My father, however, continued as a laborer in the strawberry industry for many more years until he injured his back and was put on disability. In such a town where my family is the average family, it is rare to find an educated woman. It is rare to find a Mexican woman researcher, and in a matter of minutes, I realized how rare my educational goal of becoming a plant pathologist, which is somebody that studies diseases of plants, and conducting research really was. Nevertheless, the question was only a warm-up for what was about to happen. 2 weeks after the above-mentioned incident, I drove to Las Vegas to be present at the birth of my best friend's baby. I arrived really late at night, and my friend's mother-in-law was responsible for letting me in the house. I knocked half asleep, as is to be expected at 4 in the morning. To my surprise, however, a very cheerful woman opened the door, extended her hand, and said, "You must be Mara's friend, the scientist." This time, the world didn't turn, it stopped. Never in my life had anyone referred to me as a scientist. I didn't dare label myself as such. I walked into the house and slept until later that morning, without really thinking about what just had happened. I awoke to a delicious breakfast, where the remaining family members of my friend Mara's husband were waiting. I was about to sit down and have breakfast when my friend's sister-in-law addressed me. "Alejandra, I have a question for you, but I hope it does not offend you." I thought in my head, what can she possibly ask that will offend me? I affirmed her that I would not take offense to the question and she could ask freely. This is what she asked. "Are you really a scientist, or is that what you call yourself?" I remember taking a deep breath and replied, "That's a really good question. And to be honest, I myself had never referred to me as a scientist, but I will explain to you what I do, and you can make your own judgment on whether I am a scientist or not." I began by telling her about an internship I participated during the 2006-2007 academic year, where I took part in the identification of a bacterial pathogen affecting strawberry flowers at the United States Department of Agriculture. I continued with the work I had conducted as a student lab assistant at a plant disease ecology lab and finished with a synopsis of the research project that I had been working on since the beginning of the summer. At the beginning of the chat, I was nervous, but towards the end, all of the words just rolled out of my mouth with a smile. I don't know what her final call on my professional label was, but it was the first time that I said to myself, Alejandra, you are a scientist. I've come to realize that it does not matter what you look like or how many times your dreams are questioned, because the only thing that matters is what you want and what you know you are capable of achieving. To conclude, my parents always encouraged me to go to college and study whatever it was that I wanted to do. They would always use themselves as examples of what working in a labor-intensive job was like and what I should not want. They are my most respected role models among the short but important list of role models. Today, I want to go into plant pathology, and I am a plant pathologist, which entails agriculture. I am going back to my roots and will always go back to my roots in the hope of watering a tiny dream that may sprout to be the next great scientist, or at least change the notion that the only employment a Latina woman can hold at a university is that of a janitor. And that is why Juntos is. I want to inspire students to reach their goals, and if they're interested in science, to be a bridge and be a mentor. With that, I'm going to introduce our panelist, Dr. Edelmira Segovia. Dr. Edelmira Segovia currently oversees the success coaching at Pender High School. Dr. Segovia serves as director of the Centro Hispano under the University of North Carolina, Wilmington Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Her area of research is Hispanic student success in post-secondary education. Dr. Segovia is co-chair of the Latino Alliance of Wilmington, which is supported by the University of North Carolina, Wilmington Centro Hispano. She is the recipient of several awards and recognitions, including the Kathleen Berkeley Inconvenient Women Award for commitment to social justice, the John L. Sanders Student Advocate Award by the University of North Carolina Association of Student Governments, and commitment to action and bright spot under President Obama and White House Initiative on Education Excellence for Hispanic. Dr. Segovia holds a bachelor's degree in Spanish from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, a master's degree in Romance Languages, Spanish from the Appalachian State University, and a doctorate in educational leadership and administration from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. A native of Peru, Edelmira Segovia has lived in North Carolina for the past 30 years. She has two daughters, Isabel, who is a student at North Carolina State University, and Estrella at Pender County School. Our next panelist is Dr. Rich Bonanno, who is Associate Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at North Carolina State University and the Director of NC State Cooperative Extension Services, known as NC State Extension. Through faculty and agents in all 100 counties, Extension connects research-based information to farmers, youth, and the public. Dr. Bonanno started his career at NC State in the 1980s as a faculty member in the Department of Horticultural Sciences. He left state in 1989 to return to Massachusetts, where he managed the family vegetable and flower farm, worked part-time in extension for the University of Massachusetts, and was president of the Massachusetts Farm Bureau Federation. Rich is glad to have the opportunity to be back in NC and rejoin the NC State in February 1st of 2016.
Our next panelist is Dr. Courtney Brown, who is the Vice President of Strategic Impact at Lumina Foundation, the nation's largest private foundation focused specifically on increasing America's post-secondary success. In this role, she oversees the foundation's efforts in areas of strategic planning, research, evaluation, data, and learning. She also leads Lumina's international engagement efforts. Dr. Brown works to ensure Lumina uses data and research to inform and continuously apply lessons to work across the foundation and stay focused on the impact of its work on increasing educational opportunities beyond high school for everyone. Dr. Brown received her BA from James Madison University and her MA and PhD from the University of Virginia. And our final panelist, who needs no introduction, Dr. Scott Reed, will be joining us in our panel. This first round of questions are going to be 5 minutes each, and we'll start off with ladies first. Dr. Segovia, can you share your professional work and how it is connected to the Juntos mission?
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you again, and it's like a family gathering for me here. Why Juntos? I would start by saying because I am a product of North Carolina public education, and though I can say that I am a product of that, unfortunately, my experience is that nowadays many students are saying I am a survivor of that. So my experience was very different in the early 90s, when North Carolina was definitely a thriving state in terms of education, which actually drove a lot of our immigrant families into the state. They liked the system here. They feel welcome, and so they stayed. So my family was one of them, and so I proudly say that I am a product of public education in North Carolina. My work switched into now looking at survivors of the system and into successful Latinx students, because I was truly sick and tired of seeing the term dropout being used in every piece of research that I would run into. So I flipped that and really have dedicated my life into looking at what is the right formula, what is the perfect píldora or magic pill that we can condense and send out to our Latinx students and anyone who's really tied to the immigrant experience. And I'm going to continue to refer to the immigrant experience, because even though we're dealing now with a population that may be mostly American, born here in North Carolina or born here in the US, we are still in an immigrant community, and all of us are still experiencing what is the immigrant experience through the path of our parents, through the path of our older siblings, through the path of our mentors. So that is partly why, because I am a product, and now I want to continue to go back into that, into having products, proud products of public education. I feel that at least in the state of North Carolina, we have a long ways to go to regain that champion role in the state, in national education. I also do this because why Juntos? And I say that Juntos, I did not find Juntos, Juntos found me. And it was through my colleagues, Cynthia, particularly Cynthia and I go back to many moons ago through migrant ed programs. And it was a migrant child who actually changed my life. I started out my career as a Spanish teacher in Boone, Pitt County, and in Boone, North Carolina, but had a migrant student who didn't really have a strong support system in the school system that I was in. And I realized that nobody's really here helping the immigrant community, the migrant children. So I stopped. I made the decision that that would be my last year teaching Spanish. So I dedicated my life to the immigrant community mostly. And I feel that it is my responsibility. Being an immigrant myself, as mentioned earlier, I'm a refugee from Peru. I came in fleeing terrorism. So I take relationships very seriously. I definitely look for just anything that I can do to support just anybody in need, because I have been there. We came here with absolutely nothing. Keys mean a lot to me, because we came here without a key, without a car, without anything, as many of as many of you and as many of the families that we serve. And so I've definitely made it my mission to serve, and I feel that it is my responsibility now to flip that and all the resources that have been poured into me into now our youth and those that hold our future. So it is a responsibility. I feel personally and professionally responsible to be part of Juntos and the mission of that. Additionally, I love yes people. Si se puede, and I just whatever I can do to bring more leaders into the open mindset of knocking down barriers. If you see them, if you find them, just finding ways to lift people up and to bring more people along with our mission and with our team to create doers, makers, shakers. I am very glad that Dr. Reed mentioned. What are we disrupting? I just wrote it on my board, actually, on my inside my office. What am I disrupting? What am I disrupting today? And that needs to continue to change as we go forward. So thank you, Dr. Reed, for doing that. I also do this in Why Juntos because we are shaping, polishing, shining diamonds in the rough. All of us, at whatever level we're in, all of us have strengths and talents, and I have definitely made it my mission to help mentor and help our community look within and identify what those strengths are and what those talents are, so that we can all move forward together stronger, not just building ourselves stronger, but our community, our state, and our country stronger. But we definitely have, all of us are diamonds in the rough, and I hope that my students eventually believe that in themselves, because it is a long path for them for me to say that, and then eventually for them to believe it. Then another note is that Juntos is playing a role that is not matched at this point by the school system or by other institutions. I feel that even though we say that education is for all and it should be individualized and this should be equitable, unfortunately it is not. And so we really don't have competition when it comes to the job that we're doing. We have to do it. We have to grow stronger and hopefully expand that into what should be an equitable educational system. But right now, it is our responsibility to lift our students up to level, and just that drive and that move of believing in them and helping them believe in themselves is actually now showing the results. Juntos is research evidence. We know that it works. And so we're seeing our students surpass the mission of Juntos. I know that with Juntos, we are expecting high school graduation. Our students are surpassing that. And so we are definitely glad to see the results. We believe in them. I believe in them. And even when we have students maybe hesitant at the beginning, say, oh, this is a club, and I'll see how it goes, then they are definitely believing it because they're seeing the results of that. And finally, why Juntos, for me as a professional and on a personal note, and as a community member as well, it's because I am lifting my family. Everybody in Juntos is a family member to me. You have seen the demographics. We are a 61 and growing 61 million Latinx community in this country. It doesn't mean that other communities are not reproducing or not growing. It means that Latinx community is all of our community. It is in all of our families. It is in all of our networks. So whether you are doing this for the Latinx community, I would encourage you and I would invite you to think of this as your own family. Somewhere down the line, this is your child, your neighbor, your niece, your nephew, your soon-to-be in-laws, whatever that may be. But I see my children, when I speak of my children and my community, this is my family, by blood or not, but it's all the same. So that is why Juntos for me, as a community and as a professional. And I know that, as I was mentioning earlier, just in a private chat with one of our colleagues, thank you for bringing me on board. And I know that this is, we're in this for life. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Segovia, for your work and your response. Next up, Dr. Rich Bonanno, same question, 5 minutes. Share your professional work and how it's connected to the Juntos mission.
Okay, well, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Great. So I am, just by virtue of my job, I am inherently connected to all things extension and all things 4-H where applicable. You know, I suppose the thing that I feel most connected to with Juntos, just from a quick personal standpoint, is that I'm a couple of generations removed from where many of you are from the standpoint of coming to this country, but my great-grandparents and grandparents were born in Italy. My great-grandfather was an orphan, grew up in a monastery, then became a sharecropper, then got the heck out of Naples with his family and get to the United States only to find out that when he worked in the textile mills in Lawrence, Massachusetts, the Irish were in control of everything from the first floor up. So if you're an Italian, you get to shovel coal into the furnaces, which is what he did. But remarkably, he bought 100 acres of land after he was in this country for 4 years. But the thing that's interesting about the Juntos connection is that I grew up very much in a family where you were cloistered, like you weren't allowed to go anywhere or do anything. You really didn't have friends. You get up in the morning, you went onto the farm and you pulled weeds and you did whatever you needed to do. And the concept of like having friends from school and going out and doing things was not on my radar screen until I escaped and went to college. And that was like my first foray with actually not living on the farm. So I see what a lot of people see. I was thinking about what Scott said earlier about strategic planning, and I had actually something written down that was very close to that. I don't see myself as someone that is making big decisions and running in front of this organization. I pretty much see myself as somebody that runs kind of alongside everybody in this organization and kind of respond to the needs and the realities of the day, because we're very focused on the community that we serve and wanting to make sure that we do a service that reflects what the needs of the community are, all the way up to the kind of research we do in many areas, whether it's youth development or agriculture or community resource development or food and nutrition programs. So I see this sort of overall extension connection as really making sure that I'm responsive to the needs of the people that I serve. And that includes things like the funding of positions, like when Andrew Benka and was at the university, and also of course Cynthia, who's there as our Latino program manager. Also dealing with our agents, our 4-H agents, and especially trying to understand the needs of how 4-H, and that's something we're still, I suppose, still working on, Cynthia, about, and Diana, about how 4-H really figures into Juntos in North Carolina. I see a connection with community resource development, rural development, with agriculture, with 4-H. And kind of the remarkable thing that I think hopefully I've helped to be a part of is this move that we've made at NC State University, where just coming from a very small program that Andrew and Cynthia sort of envisioned in 2007, I believe, and working through various levels of extension in the counties and how this all moved forward, to the point where the university looked at us and said, we want to embrace Juntos. We don't want it to be just an extension. We don't want it to be just in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. We want it to be part of the university and how the university looks at bringing communities forward. So I just kind of feel kind of happy and blessed to be part of this. I'm happy that my role here in Extension allows me to help facilitate things where I can facilitate and have the right conversations. Nothing is a greater joy to me than getting out in the state and seeing programs. And someone mentioned Sampson County already, and the last thing I'll say is I hit 4 minutes and 1 second on my 5 minutes is that you know, going down to a big 4-H presentation in Sampson County and the little town of Clinton that someone has already mentioned, and seeing 4-H awards night, and literally half the people in the room were part of Juntos. The largest group that was there was the Juntos group, and it was great to see all that, because some of those communities, especially our agricultural communities where we've got a lot of hand labor, tobacco, sweet potatoes, you know, apples, those kinds of crops. We have a huge Latino community, and it's great to see the participation we have in our university program. So with that, I'll turn it back with 15 seconds left.
Thank you for your response and for being responsive to the needs of the people in the community, Dr. Bonanno. All right, let's move on to Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown, please share your professional work and how is it connected to the Juntos mission?
Thank you so much. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share some slides because at heart, I'm a data nerd. So hopefully you can see this. So a little background about why Juntos is important and how it relates to the work at Lumina Foundation. So as you mentioned in my introduction, Lumina Foundation is a national independent private foundation. And at Lumina, we have a singular focus, and it's on education beyond high school. We work toward a very specific and ambitious goal, that is to increase the percent of Americans with degrees and high quality credentials to 60% by 2025. Currently, we sit at just at about 51%. So to that end, we focus all of our efforts toward creating a high quality, affordable post-secondary system that serves all Americans, regardless of race, ethnicity, age, income, or geography. We recognize that changes that have to be made are not mere tweaks. Policies, practices, and beliefs rooted in history and still affecting people today, especially keep many Black, Native American, and Hispanic people from the education and skills they need. These systems unfairly hold back individuals, the future students we care about, who are seeking a better education and a better life. We know that the promise of the American opportunity has always been in sharp contrast with our nation's legacy of racial discrimination and oppression. We're painfully aware that unfair inequities persist, mostly for people of color and low-income individuals. The percentage of whites with post-secondary degrees are almost double those of Hispanics. That's a huge gap, one we have to address. It represents millions of people across the US who face an uncertain future, people we need to help to create our common future. A commitment to racial justice deeply rooted in equity and quality learning must continue to be the bedrock of all that we do. Racial disparities in the United States are widening, and without concerted efforts, this unfairness is just going to worsen. Unfortunately, today's education systems fail to meet the needs of today's students. And I have a number of facts about today's students on the screen. In the US, these students are more racially and ethnically diverse. They're more likely to work full-time, and they're more likely to experience poverty, a lack of stable housing, and food insecurity. These circumstances reflect widening gaps in income, wealth, and access to opportunity. And I have to address the elephant in the room, the elephant that's been there for 7 months now, COVID. So even before the pandemic, higher education faced growing scrutiny about its role in contributing to severe societal equity gaps that afflict Black and Latinos, as well as historically underrepresented groups. The pandemic's impact on higher education was felt early and profoundly. And the unprecedented change it and the accompanying economic crisis brought to colleges and universities immediately exacerbated existing challenges for students from racial minorities, low-income backgrounds, and those who are working adults. And it's raising important questions about access to and equity in post-secondary education. Those who were already struggling financially before the pandemic were more affected during it. Black and Latino workers are more likely to have lost their jobs, while white and wealthier Americans are more likely to be able to work from home and not be denied and not be deemed essential frontline workers. So they're not as likely to be exposed to the virus. In general, those with less education face much more economic impact than those who have a college degree. This is something that's had a tremendous impact on our country, and it's an impact that's even more harshly felt by people of color. Data show that lower income students and those from minority groups may leave higher education perhaps permanently. The US is now dealing with multiple crises. The pandemic simply brought to light a whole new series of equity and access issues. So this confluence of a pandemic, severe unemployment, and racial injustice has simply exposed the daunting challenges ahead. None of these disproportionate impacts on post-secondary education should come as a surprise, but these crises have actually accelerated the problems and actually worsened them. At Lumina, we're focused on ensuring the US can reach the 60% attainment goal through intentional focus on Hispanics, Blacks, and Native Americans. We're looking at efforts to get more students of color, particularly adults, to enroll or re-enroll in post-secondary education. And I know your focused efforts with Latino youth across the country is helping to make this a reality. We're also aware that enrollment isn't enough. We need to help them succeed. And given the pandemic, we know there are additional barriers. Consider, for example, that only 58% of Latino and Black families own a desktop computer or a laptop. That's compared to 82% of white families. And there's a nearly 20 percentage point difference across the same populations when it comes to households with high-speed broadband internet access. It's not hard to conclude that students who had to leave campus in the middle of the semester likely had vastly different at-home learning experiences. And it's no surprise that many of them are struggling to return. We also know that real change can only happen through systemic and policy change. Deliberate policies created or contributed to these unjust conditions, and it's going to take focused efforts to remove these barriers and achieve racial equity. Higher ed has always faced a challenge to assure equity, but today's circumstances demand that we address it head on. At Lumina, we are committed to racial justice and equity. We're putting equity first. Equity first is Lumina's stake in the ground, our declaration to do things differently, and our commitment to working toward better outcomes. And equity first means exactly what that implies: increasing attainment for African Americans, Latinos, and Native American learners is the focal point of Lumina's work and our #1 priority. We define equity as being achieved when outcomes cannot be predicted by a person's race or ethnicity. And we define justice as being achieved when the underlying policies, practices, and systems and root causes that lead to inequities are dismantled and eradicated. I actually believe, I'm optimistic, even 7 months into this pandemic and after decades of racial oppression, I'm optimistic that we have a unique opportunity right now to make this happen. But all of us, including the really important work that you're all doing at Juntos, we all need to work together to come up with sustainable solutions, get them into policy, and implement it at scale to ensure that in the future, no one is left behind. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And as one data nerd to another, I want to thank you not only for your response, but those graphs that show the educational inequities and why Juntos matters. So thank you. All right, Dr. Reed, same question. Your professional work and how it's connected.
Yes, of course. My support of diversity, equity, and inclusion work was kind of gained through a series of life experiences I had that kind of opened my eyes to possibilities. You heard about my travels through Mexico with Mario. As a part of another program, I lived with a Hidatsa Indian family in North Dakota and experienced kind of the world through their perspective. And in addition, I spent a day blindfolded one time to experience that kind of challenge in abilities in order to navigate the world in which we all lived. The key here is that experiences have impacted me more than training that we all, periodically receive. Now, Juntos became a natural priority when communities in Oregon identified concerns of academic performance of challenged populations. One particular Oregon county, Tillamook County, took the lead. And there we were testing the concept of what we called and still call open campus, which is a different way of meeting community needs. We had very strong support from the local county commissioners, so the policymakers were talking to us actively. We had the community college as a key partner and co-funder. In Oregon, there's one community college for every 2 counties, and they live and work and study many of the same issues and people that we're concerned about. Ultimately, we built a new building together with the local community college in which Open Campus and Juntos is led. Now, the program easily gained attention and momentum with 100% high school graduation from Juntos participants compared to the otherwise statewide average of only about 75% high school graduation. My role in all this was to hire the right people, to be a visible supporter, and to allocate resources. I've always believed that if you value something, you fund it. Now, based upon the strong performance, Juntos established or recommended that we establish and did a Latinx action team in the OSU Extension Service. The action team evaluated and recommended more work that could and should be done. As part of the momentum, we established a new position, a Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Extension Service, filled by a Latina. Ana Lu Fonseca is her name. Some of you may have met her along the way. Ana Lu has gone on to create a cadre of what she calls diversity champions inside the organization. She developed a drop-in and a welcome center for people that otherwise wouldn't have a place to feel like they belonged, and several other consciousness-raising things. I'm sure that more work has been done since my retirement a year ago, but I'm happy to have been a part of generating the momentum.
Thank you, Dr. Reed.
Thank you to the panelists for answering this question. Now we're going to move to the second question. And each panelist will have 2 minutes, and I will send you a private message via the chat at the 30-second mark. This question is, how is Juntos meeting your strategic goals within the work that you do in the organization or the institution that you work with? Can Dr. Courtney Brown start us off with that one, please?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, as I mentioned before in my opening remarks, the work that Juntos is doing is essential in helping to create that pipeline, helping to create that support. There are putting student at the center. So at Lumina Foundation, we believe that we should think about a student-centered higher education system. Juntos puts the student at the center, ensures that they have the support and the necessary mentors and others to help them get through the system. It is essential that we get more students into the system. You're allowing that to happen. And so when I think about the goals, and we have very specific benchmarks that we've established at Lumina in order to reach that 60% goal. And as I said, we have an equity first lens. And so we have specific targets for each of our equity populations. The Latino population is especially important, as I showed the very low attainment rates. And so we have to have more concerted efforts in getting more Latinos to and successfully through post-secondary education. Your work is an essential component of that strategic mission.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, for letting us know how resources and infrastructure are really essential for meeting the needs of Juntos and some of the goals of these organizations. Dr. Rich Banana.
Thank you. Just a few things that I sort of penned down here. One is broad-based programming, being inclusive, addressing the needs of the community that we serve. Something that I'll spend a few minutes more on later in another question that I think we've got coming up is a real focus on the land-grant mission. The idea of a public university, why these universities exist, and what was the difference between universities that existed prior to the Morrill Act being passed. And it wasn't just about, you know, helping farmers. It was about being a university for the people, to allow people that were not in that sort of elite category to be able to get an education. And how do our universities continue or strive to fulfill that mission? And so to me, that's a big part of where we're going. And Juntos is a great example of fitting into all of that.
Thank you, Dr. Banana. It's always important to think about that land-grant mission and what it stands for and how we can move forward with that whole idea when we do our research and our social work. Dr. Scott Reed?
Thank you very much. We have several strategic goals that Juntos contributes to. The first of which is becoming a better university and a better extension service because of our commitment to inclusive excellence. The concept of inclusiveness is all about access for all. The university actually has a written strategic plan about inclusiveness. And the second strategic goal is to improve the recruitment of student employees from students and employees from underrepresented communities. Juntos clearly is doing that. A third strategic goal is to maintain an inclusive climate to support retention. Attracting people is only part of the work. Then you need to have a sense of community, family, comfort, and relationships. Fourth is to provide an innovative and transformative learning experience, which Juntos also does. And before I kind of turn the mic over, on the subject of a better extension service, it seems to me that extensions should measure themselves based upon increasing the fraction of the population we serve, building working relationships and common goals across the educational systems. You know, higher education isn't an island. When you look at pre-K to 12 and community colleges, they are powerful partners in this educational enterprise. A relevant extension service expands the number and quality of tools in our toolbox. Juntos has helped us to expand the size and the complexity of that toolkit. And finally, it diversifies the demographics of educators. By hiring a new kind of person, we become a new kind of extension service.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. I think you touched on a couple of really important points, which is representation, community, and inclusion, and how that really impacts our populations and achieving some of these goals. Dr. Segovia?
Yes, along the lines of all of my colleagues, the institution has several goals aligned with diversity, inclusion, retention. I did want to quote that this is in our website. We are here to support the sons and daughters of North Carolina, right? And to help them pursue their dreams. Let's be mindful of this as we move forward, that we are in our Juntos family speaking of those very sons and daughters of North Carolina. So that's who we're focusing on. As far as my role of Director of Centro Hispano, it is our direct mission to support applying, pursuing, and completing degrees by Latinx community here in our Wilmington area. And I have to mention the Wilmington area because we're a silo. We call it the Local 8. We are a Local 8 county, with New Hanover County being the only really commerce center. So we are surrounded by rural community. We have a dedication and a responsibility to bring in students from rural areas, and a lot of our first-gen American, first-gen college-bound, just the whole first-generation experience in terms of becoming college families. And I do want to echo my colleagues' points in the diversity and inclusion mission, that our students need to continue to see themselves not represented only in their peer group, but also in their staff, mentor, faculty group, and supporters on our campus.
Thank you, Dr. Segovia. With that, we conclude the second question.
Right. On to the next question. And I want to start with Dr. Bonanno on this one. So Dr. Bonanno, 2 minutes. What's the gain in having Juntos as a unified national program?
So I just got a couple of thoughts. One is to learn from each other. I am looking at other states and what they do, and maybe some nuances or differences based on how they feel they can operate and structure. And so to me, just that whole learning experience, or maybe we can sit down every now and then and talk about what we're all doing, which is part of what this meeting is all about. And the second is funding. Looking for opportunities, whether they're private or public. Can we do more within USDA or other federal agencies to see if we can get more stable funding for Juntos, and then also on the philanthropic side, is there an opportunity from really focusing on a national perspective that will help us with the funding aspect? So those are my two thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bonanno. Exactly. We're all here to learn from each other, and I'm glad we can learn from you. For Dr. Brown, what's the gain in having Juntos as a unified national program?
I would echo everything that Dr. Bonanno said. I absolutely agree that the essential piece is this learning. Now, I understand that every program is a snowflake, and there are, definitely unique aspects of each one. But, looking at it from a selfish perspective at Lumina, we are interested in scalable change, not boutique programs. And so understanding how this could be scaled to actually impact and help more Latinos be successful is really important for us. And so the extent to which it can be scaled, that lessons can be learned and taken from one site to another and shared, and more best practices can be copied, I think is fabulous. So that's why I think it would be great to have it as a national unified program.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Yes, we're all here to learn, but also scale. We want to make sure this is accessible for everyone. Thank you. So, Dr. Reed, what's the gain in having Juntos as a unified national program?
I can think of 4 gains, the first of which is increased visibility and momentum behind an established successful program. Second is the obvious expansion of impacts versus because of the growth and the resources that come to national programs. Third, we will create more stakeholders and champions along the way. And fourth and finally, it helps drive accomplishment of more educational credentials. If you accept that education drives democracy, we want to have as much of America as possible earn and utilize an educational credential. I believe it's Lumina Foundation actually that that has shown us that half of the adult population in our country do not have a post-secondary experience, and that 21% of Americans between ages 25 and 64 have some college but no degree. And if we organize ourselves and our resources correctly, we can help increase the fraction of Americans that actually hold an educational credential with all the associated benefits.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Reed. And Dr. Segovia, what do you believe is the gain in having Juntos as a unified program?
And I might repeat some of my colleagues' comments, but I do agree with all of you. I think that partly is our growing network. I know that we like to say, who knows you, who do you know, but it really is about who knows you. And so just gaining from the network itself would be tremendous. I know that that also would allow for flexibility, not only of the staff to continue to be part of the Juntos family, but also for the children and the students that we mentor to see themselves as part of this greater national community. I also feel that some states are a little bit further ahead than others in terms of the Latinx community leadership itself. I know that we are not one of the foundation or early immigrant communities. So looking at states that maybe are a little bit further than we are, or maybe they can be looking at us and seeing some of the headway that we've made. So just learning from each other and supporting each other in whatever our development level might be.
Thank you, Dr. Segovia. And yes, hopefully we can be seen now as a national program and get more of that visibility. So thank you so much for bringing that point. And this concludes our third question.
For the next couple of questions, these are individual questions for each panelist. You will each have 2 minutes. And this first question is for Dr. Segovia. From your experience and perspective, what do Latino students bring to our communities, our state, and our nation?
I'm going to refer again to the immigrant experience, even though I know we don't have particularly immigrant children. Some of them are, some of them aren't, but the immigrant experience is what brings so much wealth, so much richness into our program. This is a community that is resilient because they had to. This is, with that having to do comes innovation, creativity, resourcefulness. They have inherited the hardworking ethics of the parent community and definitely embody that themselves. With that, and also with being a community that has had to lean on others, they are a great empathy comes with our students and with our network. So that is at the key of so much of what is happening in our nation today. Empathy is at the core. And so we have a wealth of just individuals and family members here, our family, our Juntos family, as I said earlier, I consider them my own, who have empathy at the core of them. We are extremely giving community, always supporting each other. And so that is definitely part of the vein of the success of Centro, of Juntos, apologies. I know Centro too as well, that's the work that we do here. But then also, one thing that I don't know that has been mentioned yet is that in this age of trying to expand our cultural awareness, our cultural competency, our Juntos community comes with a great wealth of this already with them. So while other communities are trying to make some headway and gains in this area, cultural awareness and cultural competency, our students already come with a great amount of that. And so it is up to us to continue to expand on them with communities that may not be their own at this point. So that is a huge piece.
Thank you very much, Dr. Segovia. I think, in summary, and a lot of what you mentioned resonates with my own experience, but how can we solve challenges if we don't include our Latino and our young population into the conversation and we start meeting their needs? And I think it's very important because they're our future, right? The next question is for Dr. Bonanno. As an extension state leader, what advice would you give to your counterparts on building support for Juntos in their states?
Well, in a word, it would be flexibility. And that flexibility is in how the program should operate, partnerships, listening to all sides in terms of both from the university side listening to NC State as a partner, but also listening to the user community as what's the best way to make the program work. I think for a lot of states, it's starting off as a 4-H program, but I think what we've learned is that that's just one piece that if it goes beyond 4-H, it grows, it gets larger, it needs a reliable funding mechanism, and that may not be just coming from extension. So how do you develop those partnerships? The other thing is to think that in developing partnerships, that as when I look at Juntos, and we talk about this idea of getting kids to go to post-secondary education, it's not about just coming to NC State. It's about going to any post-secondary education, to pursuing their dreams, regardless of where they are or what university they're going to, and whether that's starting at a community college or going directly to a 4-year. So having that flexibility and having an understanding that it isn't all just about the land grant that you work for, but there's plenty of other places to look at and grow into if the program is going to work. And I think if you go in with that kind of mentality, I think the program can go a lot farther.
Thank you, Dr. Bonanno. I think that centers around the whole question of access and opportunity, right? How can we provide more opportunities and more access to these students and the training they really need to reach those objectives and those goals?
All right. Now I have a personal question for Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown, how does Juntos as a national program get the attention of a foundation like yours to invest in our work?
That's the literal million-dollar question, right? I would say a few things. First of all, be clear about what your mission is. Who are you? Who do you want to be? Who is it that you are serving? Be very clear about that. Educate yourself about what foundations, and I would look at, Dr. Reed mentioned lots of foundations when he was speaking. What foundations are aligned with your mission, both national as well as local foundations? Understand what they're looking for and what they need, but at the same time, stay true to yourself. There are way too many organizations that try to bend to what funders want, and you'll lose your identity in the process, and therefore not be able to get more funding. Develop evidence, start conversations, network, become experts on panels so you are seen and people hear more about what you're doing. Tweet, I don't want all those places with those keywords that the funders that you're interested are seeing. This is how we learn about new organizations out there. We don't want to work with the same old organizations. We want new ideas, and especially speaking from Lumina's perspective, we want ideas that come from the populations we care most about, the 3 equity populations. And so we're always looking for new partners, and understanding who you are and the evidence behind what you do is really important.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Yeah, especially trying to be clear about who we are and ourselves. It is 2020, so hopefully we leave this meeting with 2020 vision in mind and can be seen clearly. All right, now our next question is for Dr. Reed. Dr. Reed, now I want to know, what's your personal elevator pitch for Juntos?
Thank you. When I first saw this question, I begged Diana and Juan for as many floors in this elevator ride as possible, but they didn't answer that question exactly. But my elevator speech would be something like this. Juntos, while a relatively new program compared to more than 100 years of other university outreach, naturally builds upon the social covenant of America's land-grant universities to serve those with less access to educational resources, as was done early in the 20th century, serving the fledgling agricultural community in its time. The growing Latinx population is a durable and growing population sector, committed to education, responsible and responsive, and a co-learning partner in seeking and developing new tools and approaches. After a 13-year experiment, the results are in. It's time to anchor Juntos in community learning systems.
Thank you for your pitch, Dr. Reed, and what a pitch. Thank you. Okay, so these next questions will be some rapid fire questions. You're gonna have 1:30 to answer.
And the first question is, what recommendations do you have for Juntos as we move forward as a unified national program? Dr. Segovia.
I would definitely look into your own teams and see if you see representation from your local stakeholders, from your community members. But I think that introspection is key to see where your team may be at and what strengths we need to be adding to it.
Yes, identifying our flaws is very important. And sometimes it's really hard to see them from within and we need them from outside. Dr. Reed.
Thank you. I have 4 recommendations. The first is to find and develop champions. Find champions in the academic community, in the policy community, and in the NGO community. Second, convene these communities to identify community assets and resources that can be brought to bear. Things like libraries, community colleges, the business community, K-12 systems. We bring them together in what we call education councils, which is a new and expanded way of thinking. A third recommendation is tell the story and spread the word. Use social media. I have described my experiences with Mario, where I learned from an individual, but the world we live in today is increasingly using what's known as the influence economy, largely driven by social media. As it happens, this week is the 10th anniversary of Instagram. Last month, there were 1 billion posts in Instagram. That and the other social media are causing people to think and change differently. The influence economy is powerful and growing. Fourth, and finally, we should consider allowing or sponsoring movements or exchanges among the Juntos states and perhaps other states that are thinking about getting involved. Maybe we should consider a SWAT team to help an interested state move forward like others have done. So those are my 4 recommendations.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. I think you hit the nail on the head with that communication and how communication is key and getting everyone that's interested abroad and sort of communicating in the same language, but with different views. Dr. Bonanno, can you share your recommendation? What recommendations you have for Juntos as we move forward as a unified program?
So one is develop stable funding is something I've already mentioned, which I think is really important. And secondly is to develop broad support, not just within the areas that we operate now within extension, but as you'll hear later from people from NC State about bringing it to the university level, and ideally bringing it to the entire system, the university system from the public side. I'd love to see it in every campus in the UNC system, because I feel that it's not just about kids of agricultural workers. It's much broader, and the opportunities in so many places are much broader. So to me, it's the partnerships and the support that are the critical pieces.
Being an academic myself, I can always think about funding and how funding is always a challenge and a struggle. But this goes back to what Dr. Segovia and Dr. Reed has been talking about, as being clear as to the mission and why it matters to our partners and to our institutions. And lastly, Dr. Brown, can you share some recommendations?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. And so just to echo that, who do you want to be, and then get the word out. I absolutely agree that social media is there. Do you know that the majority of Americans get their news from YouTube? So find a way to get that narrative out there. I also agree with what Dr. Reed said about champions. Who are your champions? And begin to align your messages. And then, as I said, I'm a data nerd, and so set a goal. What is it you're trying to achieve, and get that out there too?
Thank you to all the panelists, and we'll move on to our next set of questions.
All righty. So for this next question, I would like to know, what would you say to those or those who are listening that are on the verge of joining the Juntos movement as either sustainers or implementers? I want to start with Dr. Bonanno.
But I think there's been some really demonstrated impact here. There's some great statistics. There's a great history. There is 13 years of history here, and that we can show in all the places that we've been, whether it's been for a short time or for a longer time, that there are measurable impacts and that it makes a difference in people's lives. And for society in general, it's a very, very positive place to be when you can move people forward and give them the opportunities, sometimes simply by giving them the information that they need to be able to move forward, whether it's the youth themselves or the overall family structure. I guess I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you for answering it. It's, yeah, that community that we have established for a long period of time, and hopefully we can get people to join the Juntos family. So, same question. What would you say to those listening who are on the verge of joining the Juntos movement as either sustainers or implementers? Dr. Segovia.
I would say that this is the best investment you can make. The evidence definitely shows that it yields. And we are not just speaking of dollar signs, but when it comes to advancement, we know that we want to see returns in terms of talent, time, and treasure. So we are looking at our future community leaders who are going to be in positions of making changes, changing policy, and truly embodying that future that we're speaking of. Also, we're going to be looking at our professionals. We're starting to see some of those results now in our very young professionals. And not to mention that this are going to eventually be a pool of our supporters, our sponsors, or our donors. Time flies by. I am already seeing that in terms of my former students being part of this giving pool.
Thank you, Dr. Segovia. And you're right, like we've been, in relation to Dr. Banana, we've been around for so long that some of our students are actually now becoming those community leaders. We actually had one of those, Kenny, who was actually leading at our summer academy. So thank you for pointing that out. Next up, let's talk with Dr. Reed. Dr. Reed, what would you say to those listening who are on the verge of joining the Juntos movement as either sustainers or implementers?
Well, I have three primary things. The first I would say is pay attention to the lessons learned to date. We should use those lessons to build upon programs. Second, carefully weigh and consider the wide-ranging return on investment that this program brings to our country. Third, become a teacher of others. And you've heard me refer to the role that Mario and the influence economy can do with that. And then fourth, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, I would quote again the Japanese CEO, do something, try anything. We are in a position where we need to experiment going forward, and there's continuous learning involved here. And finally, I would say to the Juntos families, I won't quote it exactly, but Martin Luther King observed at one time, he said, what you do today will have an impact on children not yet born.
Thank you for that insightful comment, Dr. Reed. All right, and last but not least, Dr. Brown, what would you say to those who are right on the verge of joining the Juntos movement?
And I agree with everything everyone said. Understand your community needs and who your partners are and champions within your community. Listen and learn. There are some really good, smart people here that have done this and have great best practices and evidence behind it. And this is an incredible investment in the people in your community. And by doing this, you will be on the right side of history.
Thank you for your response. And you're right, like I just ran my first summer academy this year myself, and I was so scared of asking people to make that investment, and people are so excited about our program. So thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so that ends all our panel questions.